I have a quick question for everyone. Who came here not knowing what AI alignment means? So a few, okay. So for the rest of you, I'll ask you to be patient. This will be a quick review. I'm going to talk briefly about what CHI does, the Center for Human Compatible Artificial Intelligence, and what AI alignment is. In 1960, the MIT professor who coined the whole idea of cyber, Norbert Wiener, wrote in Science about this problem. If we use, to achieve our purposes, a mechanical agency with whose operation we cannot efficiently interfere once we have started it, then we had better be quite sure that the purpose we put into the machine is the purpose which we really desire. That is the central problem of AI alignment. If you build an automatic vacuum cleaner and you say, be sure that the floor is clean, then your jewelry is at risk if you drop it, right? And then getting it exactly right is very hard. The concern is that if you have a system and you want it to make high quality decisions, that is defined as the expected outcome utility, or how good is this for me or for us of actions taken, that utility function specified by a human designer has these problems. The first is that it may not be perfectly aligned with the values of the human race, which are very difficult to pin down and seem to vary from locale to locale and possibly from person to person. And then the second problem is that any sufficiently capable intelligence system will naturally prefer to ensure its own continued existence so that it can achieve its objectives, which has given rise to a sort of a meme, the paperclip maximizer. I think it was popularized by Nick Bostrom, but it was not in fact originated by him. But the idea here is that if you do the thought experiment that you have a rather powerful machine that is an artificial general intelligence, it has access to resources, and its job is to make paperclips, then it will ultimately seek to reroute all power and all manufacturing resources towards making more paperclips, possibly to the detriment of the human race. And the ideas here, embodied here, are that if you give a system an objective, it will lead to instrumental goals, and that is goals that need to be achieved in order to achieve the ultimate goal of making paperclips. So, for example, you need to exist in order to make paperclips, and you need power and so forth. So you need resources and so what can we do? Well, there are a number of concrete ways that researchers have been approaching this, and we think of this as one of the central difficulties that in AI safety. And here's a list of some of these ways in which we're making progress on AI safety. By way of example, at Berkeley, which is where we are housed, we have a number of people working on human-robot cooperation so that you don't have to put the robots in a cage. And we are working on how to make systems able to explore in order to learn, but in a way that doesn't jeopardize the people involved. If you have a vacuum it's working its way around a museum, one has to work out some of those issues. I would say what we've come into here is a new subdiscipline of AI, but we don't want it to be a subdiscipline. In the sense that if you're building something, it should be built safe from the start. So our mission at the Center for Human Compatible Artificial Intelligence is to develop the conceptual and technical wherewithal to reorient the general thrust of AI research towards provably beneficial systems, that is, provably safe and aligned. And what that means is that, in any other area of engineering. You know, if you're building bridges, one would expect that you don't complete a design and build the bridge and then check that it's safe. You concern yourself with safety from the very beginning. We are just getting started, about a year and a half in now. The center was founded by Stuart Russell, who is the faculty investigator. I'm the executive director, and we have a terrific crew that has gone beyond computer science as it really should. And so we have a couple of investigators who are in psychology and a number of affiliate faculty in business and law and sociology and behavior science. And we are doing technical research. There's one or two speakers. There's usually a lot of math on the whiteboard. There's a lot of arguing, and somebody will mention Rawls. And so it's this really interesting combination of computer science and the fields that we're not usually in the room. So we're concerned with value alignment, long-term risks from AI, human-robot cooperation, and theories of rationality. And we're really focused on producing fundamental research to help build this new field. We are not, at the moment, spending our energy on outreach, although I was just asked to sign a letter to Congress about some legislation that's pending, but we're not really engaged in advocacy or policy, and we're not at this time engaged in the nearer term AI issues, self-driving cars and cybersecurity. This is not because we don't believe in these causes. So let me give you a quick couple of samples of the research that we're doing. I think this is the iconic example for our center. Inverse reinforcement learning is relatively recent and gives a view into what we hope will make safe AI possible. Reinforcement learning is essentially a robot maximizing a reward function. So it manages to win at Pac-Man. That has the problem of defining a reward function that captures complex human values. The first attempt at solving that problem was inverse reinforcement learning. A robot observes humans and learns the value function, the reward function. There are a couple of problems there. Humans tend not to express their reward function when they know they're being watched. And the intrinsic problem is that when it learns the reward function, it wants coffee, and you don't want it going after a lot of coffee. Like, you want it making coffee, you know, assuring that you get your coffee, right? And so this gave rise to cooperative inverse reinforcement learning, in which the robot and the human work together, and then the robot gets a payoff equal to the value to the human. This turns out to be realistic, and we're illustrating here with the making coffee. We imagine a two-player cooperative game where Alice would like the robot Rob to get her some coffee. And in inverse reinforcement learning, the robot would observe Alice making coffee and use that as evidence that coffee is good, and realizing that it should make coffee for Alice is actually a different matter. And so in cooperative inverse reinforcement learning, the robot can ask questions to Alice about her preferences and about the procedure, and she can act in a way to teach the robot to make coffee by exaggerating difficult steps, which can be a more effective teaching method than simply observing and attempting to copy. And in fact, Chai's research has shown that demonstration without instruction is actually suboptimal in games such as these. So that's the SERL, as we call it, cooperative inverse reinforcement learning. And as a second and final example, the off-switch problem, or the off-switch game, it turns out that robots have an incentive to operate and to stop you disabling their off switch. In the framework of cooperative inverse reinforcement learning, you can actually solve this problem by giving the robot uncertainty around its objectives. If the robot is never completely certain about the human's reward function, then it is able to check with a human and can be shown. So, for example, if the human doesn't switch the robot off, the robot can say, well, this action is probably aligned. And if the human wishes to switch the robot off, then it is, again, because the action is probably bad for the human. And you can actually prove mathematically that you've essentially solved the off-switch problem. So how does this all link to corporations? Well, if you think of a corporation as a utility maximizer, and the utility would be shareholder value, for example, then AGI looks pretty similar. It is ruthlessly maximizing its utility, just like a corporation might be. And the regulation is kind of an external attempt to bring corporations into alignment. But that's looking at it retrospectively, just as we do by building a system and then trying to make it safe. So from our perspective, a potential way to bring things into better alignment for corporations would be to actually reinvent the corporation. And maybe I'll leave it at that. Thank you.